Alright folks, Jack here again at the Vinyl Voyage. So today I would like to talk about a number of albums from UK guitar bands from the early noughties. This was a really exciting time for guitar music in the UK, and it really followed a bit of a hangover at the end of the 90s, with the bubble kind of bursting on Britpop, and a few of our elder statesmen, guitar bands like Oasis and Blur, they were kind of running out of steam. They were running out of ideas, and it was definitely time for new blood. And we got that really through the arrival of two American bands that came to the UK. We had the Strokes with their album Is This It, and the White Stripes with their breakthrough album Elephant. And really, they were the catalyst for a whole resurgence in UK guitar music in the UK, and a kind of garage rock revival with bands like the Paddingtons and the Vines, the Fratellis, girl bands like the Pipettes, all kind of breaking through at that time. If you've not seen it, I would really recommend that you watch the documentary Meet Me in the Bathroom, which details the New York indie rock scene in the early 2000s with bands like LCD Sound System, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, the Mouldy Peaches, and the Strokes, and how these bands went to the UK and they broke through into the mainstream in the UK before going back to the States and making it big. But what that did for the UK guitar scene really was provide the inspiration for a whole new generation of indie guitar bands. So I'm going to show the albums as they were released chronologically. So first up, from 2002, we have the Libertines with Up the Bracket on Rough Trade Records. This was their debut album. So the Libertines, if you don't know much about them, they were led by dual frontmen Carol Barrett and Pete Doherty. They both sang, they both wrote the songs, and they'd been around since the late 90s. They'd been touting around a demo tape called Legs 11. You can listen to it on YouTube. It's really good, but it had quite a different sound to what you hear on this album. So it's a little bit smoother, there's a bit of swing to it, and there's violins in some of the songs, Music When the Lights Go Out, which appeared in their second album. But when they signed up to Rough Trade Records, they were partnered up with producer Mick Jones from The Clash, and he really roughened up their sound, and all the better for it because they got punkier, they got a little bit seedier, they've got that kind of seedy London sound to them, a little bit scuzzier, and they were kind of seen a little bit as the UK Strokes. So prior to the album being released, the Libertines had already put out their first single, What a Waster, and that's an absolutely amazing song. It's kind of a pity that it doesn't appear in the album, but it's really, really catchy. The only problem with it is it didn't trouble the top 40 too much because of the amount of swearing I think that was in it. DJs didn't really want to play it. But there's a lot of great songs on the album itself. Vertigo's great, Horror Show. Time for Heroes has got some great lines about riots. It kind of makes you think of that front cover with the police with their riot shields. Radio America's a little bit slower, but then I Get Along, The Boy Looked at Johnny, are really great songs as well. For me, what really made the Libertines work and what made this debut really work was the relationship between Carol and Pete and the way they bounced off each other within songs. They alternate between taking turns on lead vocal, and yeah, it just works really, really well. There's a lot of kind of tension and push and pull between the two of them, and for me, that's what really sells this album. They kind of sound like a couple of ragamuffin London street urchins, and it was almost like the perfect response to the American garage rock of the Strokes. So next up then we have the Coral with their sophomore album, Magic and Medicine, from July 2003. This was originally on Delta Sonic Records. This is a music on vinyl reissue that I picked up. But yeah, I'm a massive fan of the Coral. I think they're great. They're from a little seaside town just outside of Liverpool, and they've just got such a great 60s influenced sound. This has got like a little bit of Mersey beat in there, a little bit of psychedelia, a little bit of folk. At times, James Skelly sounds a little bit like Eric Burdon from the Animals. But yeah, just a great, great album. This kind of loses some of the eclecticism from the first album, from the self-titled debut. So we don't really have that ska influence in here. We don't really have those sea shanties that we had in the first album, but this is a little bit more refined. It's a little bit more subtle, and I like the songwriting overall better on this. You know, you've got some lovely kind of 60s inspired organ work that brings in the forest. It's got like a kind of ominous tone to it. And then that continues that ominous tone with Don't Think You're the First. I love the song Liza. Oh, that's the third song on there. And that's Bill Ryder Jones, who was in the band at the time. He was showing James Skelly, the singer and kind of principal songwriter, how to play a Simon and Garfunkel song. And that kind of inspired the song Liza. It's got this beautiful finger picking guitar. Milkwood Blues, the last song on side A, that kind of details a acid trip that the band took, and there's like a kind of bit of narration in there from one of Dylan Thomas's poems. Is it called Milkwood? I can't remember the exact title of the poem. Then side B opens up with a song called Bill Mackay, which is really great song as well. It's like a kind of character study about this guy Bill Mackay who goes on to take his own life. But yeah, it's got a great 60s sound to it as well. But yeah, it's such a great album, this. Some great pictures of the coral. I like that one down there. And then a lyric sheet in here as well. It's on nice. The vinyl's really nice on this one. On that kind of flame red and orange vinyl. Unfortunately, though, this would be the last album for the Coral that Bill Ryder Jones would appear on. He ended up going and doing his own solo thing after this. But yeah, this is a great album. It's really mellow, I think, and it's got a really nice kind of 60s inspired sound. So not all bands in the UK at that time were following the garage rock template. This is Shaq from Liverpool with their fourth album on North Country Records from September 2003. So this album's called Here's Tom with the Weather. The title was taken from a bit of stand-up comedy from the great late Bill Hicks. So you can see I've not even broke this out the cellophane yet. Still on its cellophane. They describe it here as the remastered 20th anniversary repress on oxblood coloured vinyl. Lush with harmonies and angelic orchestration. They've made their best album yet. That was from The Observer in 2003. I absolutely love this cover. This is like an old photo of Liverpool back in the day. Check these wee characters here with their homemade masks. But yeah, if you've not heard Shaq, go check them out. Led by Mick Head and his brother John Head. But this is absolutely brilliant. It's an absolute gem of an album. No nonsense, 60s inspired guitar, pop. It's really good. So I've spoke quite a lot about Mick Head before in other videos. He was previously in the Pale Fountains in the 80s and then went on to form Shaq. He's also had another side project called The Strands. Now he's doing his own solo thing with the backing of the band, the Red Elastic Band. But for me, this is his finest moment overall. It's really good. Very Arthur Lee in Love kind of inspired or influenced, because you know Mick Head, he's always been a very vocal supporter of Love. He always cites Love as his biggest kind of inspiration. And there's a song on here, track number 3, this one here, Birds Turn to Stone, and that kind of lays out his early childhood kind of adoration of bands like Love and the Byrds. And there's some great lines in here where he talks about sitting in his ma's old back room with endless cups of tea and sitting with his brother trying to learn all the tricks by Mr. Lee. And they talk about listening to music into the night by bands like the Byrds, and listening to songs like Wild Mountain Time and the songs of Arthur Lee. But yeah, it's really good. There's great songs on here. As Long as I've Got You is a lovely acoustic song. It's got a great bass sound to it. That first song on the album, Soldier Man's great. Track 2, Birds Turn to Stone, really good. It's got a kind of psychedelic folky vibe, but just the whole album. So on side 2, the song Carousel was written by his brother John Head. I think there's like 13 songs or 12 songs in the album. I think something like 9 of them are written by Mick Head, and there's about 3 that are written by his brother John. But Carousel's written by his brother John, and that's got really nice orchestration in it, kind of like Dave Angel's orchestration for Forever Changes. It's definitely inspired by that. Miles Apart's another really, really nice song as well. But yeah, they're just such a kind of buried treasure, Shaq. I don't know why they never became more famous. Like probably the more commercial album than this is the previous album, HMS Fable, which has never been on vinyl. But to get original copies of this is really, really expensive. This is a repress from about halfway through last year. But yeah, HMS Fable needs a repress, and so does, or an initial release, and so does Water Pistol, their second album, which is absolutely amazing as well. But yeah, if you've not heard Shaq, they're really worth your time. They're really worth a listen. Check them out. So released 2 weeks later on the 15th of September 2003, on the other side of Lancashire, was the sophomore album from I Am Clute, which was self-titled, on the Echo label. So this is another repress on music on vinyl. But yeah, and again, a gem. If you've not heard I Am Clute, they're a Manchester band led by principal songwriter John Bramwell. So like Shaq, I Am Clute didn't really follow the garage rock revival template that was popular at the time. Instead, they preferred this acoustic ballad type sound where they had their acoustic guitars, this kind of ramshackle percussion that would often play in the background. Then there would be orchestration from cellos, violins, and French horns. So I think I Am Clute have got a really, really unique sound. And John Bramwell, the principal songwriter and singer, has like this kind of world-weary tone to his Mancunian vocals, which is quite unique as well. It kind of sounds world-weary, love forlorn, but it really suits the music. And there's a lot of really good songs on here, from that opening song, Untitled Number 1, which has, again, that kind of ramshackle percussion in the background. I really, really like that song. It's really good. Life in a Day has a lot of nice orchestration in it. And the song Cuckoo, that's really catchy as well. This song here, Proof, the video for that's really cool. It's just a big close-up of the actor Christopher Eccleston and his face. But the song is really, really good. And supposedly it's the actress Cate Blanchett's favourite song of all time. But yeah, I'll just show you the inner sleeve as well. There's a cool little picture. I think, I'm not sure, is that John Bramwell or is that John Bramwell? I'm not really sure. I would really like to hear a lot of his solo stuff. I've not heard any of it, but he's released a few solo albums now and they're meant to be really excellent as well. So I've not heard much I Am Clute. I think one of their other albums won the Mercury Prize. It's quite cool. Kind of marbled, transparent vinyl. But yeah, I need to hear a little bit more I Am Clute, but I'd like to hear some of John Bramwell's solo albums as well, which are very highly regarded. So next then we have Block Party with their debut album from 2005. It's called Silent Alarm and it's on Wichita Records. Block Party, if you don't know about them, they're a three-piece band from London and they've got a kind of post-punk, indie rock kind of sound. And yeah, it's a bigger sound than the last 2 or 3 albums that I've shown. A rockier sound, like the cover suggests, a much colder sound as well, almost like glacial in parts. But yeah, great nonetheless. Their percussion's really to the fore. It's really, really tight. It's, yeah, a lot more to the fore, I would say. But the song Banquet, 4th track on side 1, is really, really good. I really like that. I'm not so familiar with this album as I am the previous albums. I remember Block Party at the time, but they weren't a band that I was into at the time. So I'm kind of enjoying this album for the first time, I suppose. Whereas all the other ones previous, I've been into these albums since they were released. But yeah, really enjoying this and another excellent album from the kind of, I suppose, mid-2000s for this one. So next up then we have Babyshambles with Down in Albion from 2005, again on Rough Trade Records. So this, of course, is Pete Doherty's post-Libertines album, the album that he recorded after he'd been kicked out the Libertines. And again, it's a really great album. It's got a similar kind of ramshackle sound to the Libertines, but if possible, it's probably even more ramshackle. It's definitely sparser. There's a lot more space in the album. There's a lot of great bass on this album by a musician called Drew McConnell. But again, like the Libertines' first album, it's produced by the Clash's Mick Jones. But by the time this was released, Pete Doherty, certainly in the UK, was notorious for his behaviour. He was all over the tabloids. His name and his picture was in the gutter press every single day, and he kind of covers that on the song Kilimanjaro on side 2, where he kind of talks about his life in the spotlight. On other songs, La Bella La Bête, he has his then girlfriend Kate Moss singing backing vocals to good effect. That's the first song on the album. And then on Pentonville, he's got like a kind of bit of a dub influence on Pentonville, and that kind of details his time spent in the notorious Pentonville jail. But yeah, if I show you the inside as well. So he did all the artwork for the album as well, Pete Doherty. And it's kind of similar in style, I think, with all these doodlings. It's similar in style to the Libertines' first album. There you see, right up at the top, you can see Kate Moss there. I'm not sure, is that her in Pete Doherty's QPR football top? But yeah, a lot of the lyrics, handwritten lyrics, and like the Libertines' first album, the lyrics have that kind of dark romanticism. I think Pete Doherty's a good lyricist. He spends a lot of time writing poetry. He's a poet as well. But obviously he has to carry this album without his old mucker, Carol Barrett, and I think he does that again to good effect. There's a lot of songs on here. I've heard a lot of critics say in the past that this should have been cut down by maybe 4 or 5 songs. There's 16 on here, but I don't know. I like it. It's there's lots of kind of upbeat songs like "Fuck Forever" and "What Katie Did Next." This 32nd of December, songs like that have like a kind of very Clash kind of sound. Ari Boers sounds very Clash as well. Then you've got songs like Pipe Down, which detail his kind of growing dependence on substances. Like, I think he was right in the grip of a crack habit by that time. So yeah, it's quite a, suppose you would say, a confessional album in a lot of ways. Him talking about his time in the spotlight in terms of the UK tabloids. Albion's a really nice song near towards the end of the album, and Albion itself is this kind of romanticised, idealised, kind of mythical version of Britain from times gone past. And Albion itself was a song that was an old Libertine song that he's kind of repurposed for his Babyshambles debut. But yeah, there's loads of catchy stuff on here, and it's a really well put together album. I think maybe for a lot of people at the time it was too ramshackle, and it felt like it had just been um, spat out with like little polish or little thought for any production value. But I like that, and I like the imperfections, and I think that's what makes it really a really good album, that and the songwriting. And finally, from Sheffield, we have the Arctic Monkeys with their debut album, Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, from 2006 on Domino Records. And this really was the album that sent them into the stratosphere in terms of UK indie pop. And the songs from this album had been pinging around for ages. I'd heard pretty much all of these songs prior to the release of the album because there was so much hype prior to this being released. All the songs were available in demo format on platforms like Napster and LimeWire. And by the time the album came out and I heard the songs in their studio versions, it sounded really overproduced, and I really liked the early demos. Songs like When the Sun Goes Down, the song about the prostitute, That was originally called Scummy Man, I think. There was a video or a short film made about it called Scummy Man as well. But I really, really liked the early versions of these songs. And while the demos were full of charm, the album itself was much more punchier, it was more energetic, it was more powerful. You know, you get great songs on here like I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, their debut single, which had so much energy in it and those great, great lyrics, like talking about dancing on the dance floor like a robot from 1984, delivered by principal songwriter Alex Turner in that wonderful Yorkshire drawl. You know, I think there was nothing really else like this at the time. But all the songs on here, you know, and the subject matter that they covered, it was tales of misspent youth, tales of fights at taxi ranks, carry-ons with bouncers, getting taxis from A to B, getting picked up by police vans and thrown in the back, and all these little nods to youth culture, like all these little chavs going about with their tracky bottoms, their tracksuit bottoms tucked in socks, from those great lyrics on their final song, A Certain Romance. So the album's full of all these great little melodramas, and they're almost like little vignettes. Songs like Mardy Bum, about this relationship with one of the partners, just like a kind of always taking the hump, always having a moan, or When the Sun Goes Down, this song about this kind of self-centered, kind of horrible cretin of a man who kind of just takes advantage of those around him, always on the hunt for prostitutes at night. And A Certain Romance, I love the drums at the beginning of that, those kind of tribal drums, and it's almost like a little mini indie rock opera. But yeah, it's great. What a great album. Just inside sleeve there. These photos themselves, they're the kind of what you'd expect from the Arctic Monkeys, especially in these days where it was just kind of tales of young love and what it was like to be young in Yorkshire at that time. And I know a lot of Arctic Monkeys fans don't like the new direction that Arctic Monkeys have taken, and you know, this is their kind of best album, but I like the way that they've developed over the years. So there we have it, a little snapshot of some of my favourite UK guitar bands and albums from the early 2000s to kind of the mid 2000s. I think it was a really, really rich period for UK guitar music. Now, if you've got any recommendations of your own from the period, or you'd like to comment on any of the things that I've shown, please do. I especially like recommendations because I love checking out new albums and new artists that I've not heard. Likewise, if you enjoyed my video, please give it a like. And if you'd like to subscribe, please do so. It would be great to have you aboard the good ship Vinyl Voyage. And until the next time then, we'll see you later. Bye for now.